So the question is, are expensive third-party plugins within your DAW a waste of your hard-earned money? And also, how should you handle effects like flanger, chorus, or maybe octave effects while working with amp sims? Welcome to Viewer Questions Answered, episode 11. All right, so without any further ado, let's jump into this excellent group of questions submitted by my loyal email subscribers. And our first question comes from Bogdan. Hey Bobby, thank you for the information on your channel. It's really helpful. My question is, what's your opinion on plugins like CLA drums, CLA vocals, bass guitars, or Howard Benson channel strips and so on? You always say that you're a big fan of simplicity, but many producers say it can work good only with demos or things like that. Do you agree with them or do you not? Would like to hear your answer. Bogdan from Russia. Okay, well Bogdan, that is an excellent question, and let me just boil it down to this. The question is, like I mentioned at the intro of the video, are expensive third-party plugins a waste of your money or not? And the answer is yes and no. Let me explain. The truth is, you really don't need any plugins, for the most part, out of the stock plugins that come with your DAW. And if you don't believe me and you want to watch me mix an entire song using only the stock plugins within Reaper, which is only a $60 DAW, there's a link in this video's description where you could check out that video. I did an entire mix from start to finish using only the stock plugins entirely for free within Reaper. Not a single third-party plugin to be seen in sight. Now with that being said, I own a plethora of third-party plugins. I own a ton of the Waves plugins, Metric Halo, McDSP, and more recently I own a bunch of the Sonomus plugins and I love them. So you might be thinking that I'm somewhat of a hypocrite here, but here's the thing that we gotta remember. Do you need high-end plugins or high-end gear to get great results? Absolutely not. That doesn't mean that you should avoid using them altogether. Also, for me, the main benefit of using, like, let's say the Waves plugins is the workflow. They feel more like using an analog piece of gear. Even if it's just psychological, just looking at the knobs and not staring at numbers can sometimes put you more in a flow state and again, make you feel like you're working on, I don't know, analog gear in an analog studio. So for example, let's say I'm an old school engineer that honed my chops, on an analog desk in an all analog studio working with tape. I'd probably gravitate towards plugins that are more geared toward that type of workflow. It would just be an easier transition. Now I'm kind of in a gray area where I grew up using a computer, but I've also spent a lot of time using analog gear as well. So for me, I use both stock plugins and higher end, analog style plugins like the ones you mentioned in your question. Because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. It's you that's gonna achieve the result that you want, not the plugins you use. Now, for someone who thinks they're gonna buy these plugins and all of a sudden start churning out great mixes, those are the people that should not buy high-end plugins because they should still hone their craft using the tools they have and learn the basics of mixing first, at least in my opinion. Back in the day when I first got into DAWs, I was guilty of this myself. I would struggle with the snare sound and then I'd see some pro producer online using, let's say, the Waves API bundle. I actually went out and bought the API bundle thinking my snare sound would improve, and lo and behold, my snare still sounded like crap. In reality, I had to learn how to tune the snare in the first place, mic the snare, and finally I had to get the drummer to actually hit the snare in order to produce the sound that I wanted. In reality, it all had nothing to do with plugins. So dude, I hope that answers your question. The truth is that it doesn't matter what plugins you use, stock plugins or high-end plugins, you could achieve great mixes either way. Okay, and question number 2 here comes from Bertrand. Thanks to all of your good tips, I'm now more confident to mix some local band stuff. As I can't quite quit my job right now, I'm also planning to do this as an online service. Would you recommend any platform? Okay, well Bertrand, that's an excellent question, and I'm just gonna give you my own experience. I know there are all these platforms like Fiverr and Upwork and things like that, but if you're looking to do metal bands or rock bands, in my experience, again, I can be wrong about this, bands are not looking for engineers on these platforms. Now, like I've said in previous videos, the thing you're gonna wanna do is form real relationships with real people within higher quality bands. And in my opinion, the best place to network with bands are gonna be on social media sites, like let's say, Instagram or the usual Facebook. You gotta remember, most bands are looking for producers or mixers through their network. So you wanna be where they're hanging out in the first place. So again, in my experience, the best place to network with bands and the best place to form relationships and look for online work would definitely 100% be on sites like Facebook and Instagram or any other normal social media platform. Now, I'm stating this just based on my own experience and also the experience of other friends of mine that work within the same genre, and this is what we've all found to be true. So Bertrand, I hope that helps, and keep me posted on your progress with your production career. Okay, and our third question comes from Joaquin. Hey Bobby, when you work with amp sims for guitars, how do you deal with guitar effects like flanger, chorus, octaver, and so on? Do you use effects from an amp sim directly, or do you use separate plugins in your DAW to make these effects and have more control over it? Would be great if you have some hints for me. Rock on, Joaquin. Okay, well Joaquin, excellent question, and the truth is, I do both. It usually comes down to the source material and also just what mood I'm in that day. Let me give you a crystal clear example here. Let's say there's a lead guitar that I want a delay effect, but I want the delay effect to be a little dirtier, almost kind of vintagey, like how a guitar player would use delay, let's say at a live show. Then maybe I would use a delay stomp box within my amp sim, or even a delay stomp box pedal plugin before my amp sim in order to achieve that dirtier, grungier type of effect, just like I would in the real world if I were playing through a physical amp using an actual stomp box. So in that case, I would use an effect box right within my amp sim, or again, before my amp sim, but it would be a stomp box style effect. Now, let's say I want a nice crystal clear delay effect that's more like part of the mix, just to give the lead guitar, more space in the mix. Then I would use a simple delay plugin right within my DAW set up on a send. Now right here, we're talking about the same effect, but two different situations. Now you can apply this logic to chorus, or like you mentioned, octaver, flange. It all comes down to the same process, at least for me. If I want it to sound a little grungier, more like a typical guitar stomp box effect, I'll use a stomp box plugin, or I'll do it right within the amp sim itself. And if I want it to sound more clean, more studio-like, I'll do it as a send effect. So all in all, don't get too caught up in the details, just do whatever feels right for you in the moment, but that's how I differentiate between the two processes, at least for me. So Joaquin, excellent question. Okay, and our next question here comes from Mike. Hey Bobby, I don't do a lot of vocal tuning, but when I do, I find that my Waves Tune plugin really struggles to recognize raspy or Hetfield style vocals. The plugin just can't seem to cope with this style of vocals and adds in loads of crazy artifacts, pops and clicks, etc. Are there any pro tips for getting around this problem? Love the channel, dude. Keep up the great work. Many thanks from the UK. Mike. Okay, well, Mike, this is something that I've been struggling with forever. And guess what? We're all struggling with the same problem. Tuning software does not like raspy sounding vocals. Now, I have used Waves Tune in the past, but I'm more of a Melodyne guy. I've been using Melodyne now since 2007, so a very long time. And Melodyne struggles with this as well. The best way I found to get around this is to just go in there and by hand cut up your notes within your tuning software, and sometimes you just have to correct them by ear. I know it's a pain in the neck, but a lot of times that's what it takes to get harsh, raspy vocals to be in tune. Now, every once in a while, if I'm working within Melodyne, sometimes I'll change the algorithm from polyphonic to monophonic, and that will sometimes help resolve the issue. But that's hit or miss, man. A lot of times I'm doing it completely by ear and by hand. It is time consuming, but that's what pros get paid for. Now, just recently, I upgraded to the new version of Melodyne. I think it's Melodyne 5, and the only reason why I upgraded is because I upgraded my machine, so I had to upgrade. And from what I've read online, they've sort of helped resolve this issue, so I'll keep you posted if that tends to be the case. And the good news for you as a Waves Tune user is that if Melodyne resolved this issue, I'm sure they're right around the corner for resolving the issue as well. Because again, it's something that we all struggle with. It's been a known issue for over a decade now. So Mike, I wish I could give you a one-size-fits-all magic bullet solution to our situation here, but unfortunately, it just takes extra work and nitpicking to get those raspy vocals in tune. Thanks for your question. Okay, and our final question of the day comes from Pierre. Hey Bobby, just finished watching your songwriting template video and I have a question. I feel like a little explaining is needed first. I'm a hobbyist, but I won't send it out for mixing and mastering. As a father of two, husband, and construction worker, I have to put my money somewhere else, but I do want to improve in audio. My question is this: should I fine-tune my template until it does everything, or should I make a songwriting template, a mixing template, and a mastering template? How do I bounce from one to the other? Should I mix master my song in the songwriting template? Again, I'm not planning on having anybody do anything for me. I just want to compose, mix, master, and release my music on SoundCloud and move to another song. Sorry for the long question and keep doing what you're doing. You rock. Well, Pierre, thank you for your question, and it's an excellent one. And also, I love anything that has to do with workflow and just being overall efficient when it comes to the creative process. Now, you could do this in infinite number of ways, but I'm gonna share with you the way that I approach it. Now, I like to keep things as simple as possible when it comes to my productions. So with that being said, I have 3 primary templates: a songwriting template, a mixing template, and a tracking template. Now, my tracking template and songwriting template are very similar. The main difference is that within my tracking template, I have, vocal tracks and live drum tracks. And in my songwriting template, I mainly have synths, guitar tracks, a bass track, and an easy drummer track preloaded and ready to go. So now you asked a great question. How do you bounce between these different templates? And I'm gonna give you a real world example of how I bounce between those 3 templates. Let's say I'm working with a band and I demo the song with just the guitar player of the band. We program the drums, we throw down a bass track, and we throw down some general guitar tracks. All of this is being recorded into my songwriting template. But now let's say the band is ready to record for real and we're gonna start recording some live drums. What I would do then is import tracks from my tracking template into that session that was originally my songwriting template. So if you follow, the original Pro Tools session was built off of my songwriting template, but then the song is all finished and we're importing tracks from the actual tracking template, and all we have to do is record directly into that session. Now in this situation, it would pretty much end there and I would just wrap up the mix based off of my tracking template. But let's say I'm working on a mix that I didn't record myself, which is what I'm doing 80% of the time these days. In that situation, I would have a blank Pro Tools session with absolutely no plugins loaded, nothing, just audio, and I would import a bunch of tracks from my mixing template. And I would simply drag my audio tracks onto the proper tracks within my mixing template. That's the way that I do it. Again, it's not complicated, it's super straightforward. I have my pre-made templates and I simply import the tracks that I need from each whenever I need to accomplish a specific task in the production process. Now, I don't even have a mastering template because for me, mastering is so straightforward because again, I prefer to get my mixes right at the source. So mastering for me is usually a very quick process, usually only using 1 or 2 plugins, so I don't really have a template for that. But again, songwriting, tracking, and mixing, I do have templates and I simply mix and match and import for whatever is necessary at that stage. Now, I'm a Pro Tools user, but you could do this within any DAW, whether it's Reaper, Logic, Cubase, Studio One. Pretty much any DAW will let you import tracks from other sessions. So Pierre, I hope that answers your question and helps point you in the right direction and maybe gives you some ideas on how you could approach templates within your own workflow. Thanks for your question. Okay, so I'd just like to shout out and thank everyone who submitted this excellent group of questions. And again, if I haven't gotten to your question yet, be patient. I will eventually get to it within one of these upcoming videos. If you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And do not forget to click the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload weekly videos on all things metal and rock production. You can both like and follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Links are in the description below. And if you haven't, you could download my free guitar cab impulse response. There's a link below in this video's description. The IR was taken from my all-time favorite Mesa Boogie cab that I have at my studio loaded with V30 speakers, mic'd properly with an SM57. It'll help you dial in great metal guitar tone with minimal fuss. No notching, no crazy boosting, just a tone that's right at the source. Again, you can download it for absolutely free. There's a link below in the description. Until next time, happy mixing.